Alright guys, so today we're reacting to a video called How Joe Rogan Makes $110.5 million a year. It's by Noah Kagan. We actually reacted to another one of his videos last week. He makes some really cool stuff. It'd be cool to collab with the guy at some point. He does a lot of similar stuff that we do. So
100%.
But yeah, let's go and start it and we'll see what how Joe Rogan makes that much.
That's a lot of money.
On December 24th, 2009, Joe Rogan uploaded his first ever video of the Joe Rogan Experience. Just him and some buddies live streaming on their webcam. And only 100 people were watching. 11 years later, Spotify signed a multi-year exclusive deal with Joe Rogan, estimated at 100 million buckaroos. But Joe Rogan has actually been making a lot of moolah from multiple income streams way before this.
So that's kind of cool. You see that most people that are pretty successful have multiple income streams. Very few people you see only have one income stream. So even if you do really well in one income stream, a lot of times the other income streams end up being better than the original income stream.
Around 1997, Dana White reached out to him and said, hey, you should come comment for the UFC.
I wonder how Dana White reached out to him. Like why they reach out to him?
He was always in like the comedian scene, so he did like MC type jobs.
Yeah.
And like it was probably like a crossover because he was into martial arts already and Dana always came.
So they knew he was in martial arts. He already had he was funny. He was
Yeah.
24 years later, he is still commenting for the UFC and getting paid extremely handsomely for it. Our research team saw that he's getting paid around $50,000 per event, and with around 40 UFC events a year, that is $2 million a year.
I don't know why that number sounds so low.
I was about to say that number seems like $2 million a year to commentate. But again, you know, if you look at the UFC, they pay everybody shit. So like, it doesn't really surprise me. Like if it was boxing or something else, you'd probably be paying.
But I saw somewhere that like the ring girls make like $600K a year.
Really?
Yeah, and
That's
like Bruce Buffer gets paid like ridiculous.
Not more than him. He doesn't. No, Bruce Buffer I think gets paid about half what Joe Rogan gets paid.
But still, that seems low, doesn't it?
It seems low, but look, Dana White's a smart dude. Like he knows how to maximize his profits and be able to make it to where everyone makes as little as they can and be happy enough to where they keep doing it.
Yeah, because if Joe Rogan's really making $110 million a year, which we're gonna see, $2 million is nothing.
He's just doing it for fun.
Yeah, doing it for fun.
He enjoys it
because he likes it.
He enjoys it for sure.
Joe Rogan is still doing stand-up on the side, and he is one of the biggest American comedians out there. But how much is he actually getting paid from doing his stand-up comedy? Normally he was doing about 4 venues a month in theaters all across the country, with average capacity of 15,000 seats. And these tickets cost anywhere between $40 and $120.
That's cheap. Like I just went to a couple concerts in venues just like that, and tickets were hundreds of dollars.
Actually, I went to a Joe Rogan show. He does something interesting. He doesn't allow people to resell his tickets. Like if you buy his ticket, like you can't transfer that ticket to anybody else's name. You have to go because he doesn't want people to like gouge the price of the tickets.
So if Joe Rogan actually was doing his comedy specials once a year, plus touring about 4 times a month, making over $23 million a year from comedy. That's no joke.
I mean, Joe Rogan's pretty funny. I mean, I would go watch his stuff anytime he's in town for sure.
Yeah, no, he's funny.
It makes sense.
Next up is Onnit. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but do you know that Joe Rogan actually owns 50% of that company? And I actually interviewed Joe's business partner, Aubrey Marcus, on my podcast a few years ago.
I put a lot more time into Onnit than Joe does, but his value is equivalent to what he's providing.
The fact that Joe's name is connected to it is what makes it so good. Like if Joe's name wasn't connected to it, it probably wouldn't do shit. Just like you were saying last week with Logan Paul, he connected his name with the energy drink or whatever he connects his name with, and that's what makes it so big. It's not even the product. So
100%.
You know, he realizes that his name is so important.
And this is a really perfect example for you to think about, where there's a partnership where someone brings the attention, Joe, or a creator like yourself, as well as an operator like Aubrey, who starts and runs the businesses.
You know, I watch the Shark Tank every once in a while, and so many people like get offers and then turn them down because they're like, oh no, I didn't get what I want. I didn't get what I want. But what's crazy is literally you could almost give them part of your company for free and you'd make a ton of money. Like the value of having those sharks, the value of having Joe Rogan, the value of having Logan Paul, the value of having anyone like that involved in your company or involved in whatever that you want to promote is worth so much. It doesn't even matter what they pay. Anyone that has like shows like, what happened after they became partners, everyone instantly becomes, 100 times more, popular, and they sell 100 times more what they've sold only because that person's attached to it. So literally, even if they gave them that % for free, they would do so well. And people just don't get that. It's so important to have that type of partner.
Joe Rogan Experience is a 3-parter. First off, he did sell the rights of his podcast to Spotify. You probably heard it. It is a $100 million multi-year exclusive. We're going to estimate it's been around 3 years, but that number is actually not public.
Have you ever watched like one of Joe's podcasts or any like clips or anything like that?
I've never watched it, but like I have been in the car where people had it on and I would listen to like, a few minutes here, a few minutes there of it. I mean, it's super cool to watch. I've never watched a podcast of anybody's.
Yeah.
If I had to watch a podcast though, Joe would definitely be on the top of the list for sure.
What's crazy about him, like now a lot of people have big podcasts where they have crazy guests on, but he was like the first one to do like guests of their caliber, like Bernie Sanders, Edward Snowden, like people that you couldn't even like think of getting on a podcast like he
Right.
got on podcasts.
How much is he actually making? So like I said, Joe's doing over 200 million downloads per podcast. Assumption-wise, we're looking at Joe's getting paid around $20 CPM. So for every 1,000 downloads he's getting, he makes around 20 bucks. Let's do some math to actually calculate what those numbers look like. So 200 million downloads a year. Wow, those are big numbers. Divided by the 1,000 CPM, and he's getting 20 bucks times 12 months. So he's making $48 million a year from his podcast sponsorships.
$48 million a year on the sponsorships on top of the $30 million a year he gets paid.
Yeah.
Also, he keeps all the sponsorship money.
Right, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And his team is a 2-person team. Like it's him and like the person that does all like the tech shit. He keeps it super minimal.
What do you think? Like, what do you think was the thing that made Joe just go from being just anybody to being like such a high caliber type person where everybody wanted him?
Because I'm a fan of his. Like just from my perspective, one, like I'm a UFC fan, and that gave me exposure to him.
Yeah.
And then like I started seeing his stuff, and I was like, you know what? He seems like a super non-biased guy. Like he'll have a Bernie Sanders one day, and then Ben Shapiro the next.
Right.
And he's like relatively like central in all of the discussions. And when he disagrees with someone, he's super respectful, but he's like, I disagree with you fully. Like, so I to me that was really cool because it was like almost like journalism where I could actually hear someone's perspective. That
So you
just,
think it was the UFC that got him to the next level, or Fear Factor, or the comedy? Like, what do you think was like the thing that?
If I had to say out of all the things that were to
Yeah.
get his name out there the most, I'd say the UFC was for sure the biggest.
Yeah.
But I think as soon as like YouTube and like this podcast, I think is the thing that skyrocketed him.
Right.
But like this is the main thing he's known for.
Of course.
Like there's people that know Joe Rogan, they don't even know he does UFC. Like that's what I would think.
Amazing.
His UFC commenting is generally earning him around $2 million a year. His comedy and comedy specials making over $23 million a year. His supplement company, Onnit.com, and his partnership with them is around $2 million a year. As we talked about earlier, he probably reinvests most of that money back into the company and doesn't take distributions. This is an estimate. Number 4, from the Joe Rogan Experience, he's got mega money coming in from this. $30 million a year from the Spotify deal, around $48 million a year from sponsorships on his podcast, as well as on YouTube AdSense, over $6.2 million a year.
Well, it's crazy. This is like 75-80% of the money he makes is really just from doing content. It's crazy how much money people can make doing that. Like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, like no one would have thought that you could do these types of numbers. And the hottest YouTube guys are just killing it.
And what's crazy about everything was like, imagine I were to tell you, oh, you have the option for video, but
Right.
people just listen to you.
Yeah.
Joe was like on it from day one. Like he did this shit before anyone even like thought of it.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. First to market in anything is always going to kill it, and especially if you're good. Obviously, if you're not good, then maybe you'll fade away. But if you're good and you're first to market, I mean, that's a combination of just making unlimited amounts of money.
$110,520,000. Joe Rogan, 2 thumbs up. So quick disclaimer, this is revenue, not profit. I always ask people about that, and it doesn't take into account his cost. But one of the things to notice is that a lot of the things that he's doing, his YouTube ads, podcast sponsorship, Spotify thing, there's not actually a lot of cogs in that besides maybe some servers and maybe some teammates and employees that he hires. So there's going to be a lot of profit in the $105 million a year of revenue.
One thing I will say that I think you two have pretty good in common is like Joe Rogan. I look at his lifestyle and I'm like, I don't think there's a part of that guy's day that he just doesn't love his life. Like every single one of the things that he just mentioned are things that he loves. Like he loves fitness and wellness for his supplement company. He loves MMA, so he has UFC.
Yeah.
He loves comedy. Like every single thing that he's doing is a passion of his. And he like says, he's like, look, I never intended on like being this big. Like this was just like, he's like, it's crazy. I never anticipated
It's
anything
impossible
like
to
this.
know. I mean, you catch on. And
Right.
I mean, everyone should live their life like that. Everyone should live their life just doing what they enjoy. Like once you get to a certain point to where you've made a certain amount of money, it's stupid for anyone to live their life where they're not doing stuff they enjoy all the time. I mean, that's what life's about.
Right.
So if you're doing stuff you don't enjoy and you're able to only do that, it's just silly.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the reasons he's successful. Like if you're passionate about something the way he was,
always gonna be better.
he's like, you're just always gonna work harder than anyone else that doesn't like it.
Of course.
Find partners that allow you to focus on what you're best at.
That's the most important thing he just said, I think. Finding partners to enable you to grow. If you know my story at all, I have tons of partners and tons of businesses, tons of everything I do. I have partners, and if I didn't have partners, I would just be so much less successful. Like literally, I wouldn't be able to do most of what I do because I'm not good at everything. I'm not good at a lot of stuff, and my partners are good at the things I'm not good at.
I see this a lot of time with YouTubers. They're still doing their editing, and I'm like, why don't you focus on the content creation and hire people all around you? So that,
That's just what I just said.
Joe, why aren't you doing live comedy events? Sell your tickets, have live online shows. We want to see you online. Number 2, I think it would actually be kind of interesting to have Joe Rogan Experiences. That's what his podcast and his show is called. So why don't we have hunting trips? Why don't we have different experiences that frankly hire a travel company and let them go create all these experiences that people can go on? And lastly, I'd like to see Joe even create more products. We know that he's into saunas and hunting and weird ass animals and psychedelics. Here's an opportunity for him to say, here's more food lines that I have. Here's more fitness stuff that I have. Here's more like home appliances that I have. And I think a lot of people like myself would be excited and buy stuff like that from him.
So Noah ended the video by like saying all the things that he would improve on. Joe Rogan has like, because I watch his podcast quite a bit, he always says, he's like, I don't give a about money. Like he's like, if I don't want to do something, like I don't want to add more things to my schedule. He's like, I love my life, so I'm gonna keep it this way.
That's what we just talked about. Like you got to enjoy life. Like once you get to a point like that, only do shit that you enjoy.
Joe's just stayed so consistent. Like if you looked at his podcast, like people put so much pressure on it because it gets hundreds and millions of people watching it. Right. So like when you say something, there's an impact. Like when he had Bernie Sanders on, like the polls the next day were like way higher for Bernie the day after he was on the podcast, just because he was on the podcast. Yeah. And Joe's like, now I have to think about all the accountability with my words and shit. But he's like, you know, at the end of the day, I made this podcast. It's a silly ass podcast. I got to treat it that way because that's what got me successful. You know?
Right, for sure.
So he stays pretty consistent. And I think that's why people respect him so much is even at that level, like he's still just a normal dude.
All right, cool. Well, if you like this video and you want to see us make more videos, you better like, subscribe, and comment on other videos that you want to see us make.